I sat by the window of my downtown apartment, the late afternoon sun casting a golden glow over the polished hardwood floors. My silk blouse felt impossibly soft under my fingers, yet I could hardly focus on the luxurious warmth around me. My phone buzzed again, insistently, dragging me from the calm I'd built over years. Another message from my sister, the one who somehow always seemed to get what she wanted. I stared at it, tasting the bitterness of old wounds. "Can you pay the venue bill? Mom said it's on your credit." My heart stuttered, not from surprise, but from the weight of memory. This wasn't just a bill. It was the echo of years where I had quietly carried the invisible burdens, only to be blamed when I refused to bend. I glanced at the skyline. The city stretched out like a canvas I had painted with my own effort. No one here owed me anything. Yet, the message brought the past rushing back. The silent dinners, the whispers, the smirks when they assumed I had no backbone. I tightened my grip on the phone, feeling a flicker of pride underneath the old sting. Somewhere deep down, I realized this confrontation was inevitable. They expected compliance, weakness, maybe tears. But the woman looking out at that skyline wasn't the girl who had trembled under their expectations. She was steadied by every late night, every rejection, every moment she had learned to stand tall, even when no one believed in her. And now, as my sister's name blinked on the screen, I felt a quiet thrill. This time, the story wasn't going to end the way they imagined. I remember the winter night like it was yesterday, though I was barely 23 and barely known to the world. Snow swirled outside our small suburban house, covering the driveway in a pristine, cold layer, but inside, the air was thick with tension. My parents sat across from me at the kitchen table, their expressions tight, expectant, the kind that made you feel every word you were about to speak could shatter something fragile. "I don't see why I should pay for her wedding venue," I said, my voice trembling despite my best effort to stay calm. "It's not my debt. I didn't ask for this, and I won't take responsibility for it." My mother's eyes narrowed, the sharpness of disappointment slicing through the warmth of that room. "You're being selfish," she said. My father nodded, a shadow of anger in his face. "Family comes first. You'll understand when you're older." The lump in my throat made it impossible to swallow, and my hands shook under the weight of injustice. I had worked months to save every dollar for my own education, my own apartment, my own life, and yet they treated me like a bank, a tool to be used when convenient and blamed when I refused. Their words burned, but deeper than that was the sting of dismissal, the quiet message that my voice, my choices, didn't matter in their world. I pushed back tears, staring down at the small gold locket my grandmother had given me years before. It wasn't flashy, but it held a note tucked inside. "Never let anyone decide your worth. You are stronger than you think." I clutched it as if it could shield me from their anger, drawing courage from her unwavering belief in me. I left that night with a locket around my neck, a coat pulled tight, and a resolve that trembled yet held firm. I wouldn't let their expectations define me. I wouldn't allow their manipulation to chain me. And with every step into the snowy darkness, I felt the first stirrings of independence, fragile but undeniable. It was the night I decided that my life would not be dictated by their whims, that I would forge my own path, even if it meant walking it alone. And though the wounds were fresh, I could already feel the seeds of resilience taking root, promising a woman who would rise, not bend, and who would one day turn the tables in ways they could never imagine. The city was a jungle of lights and noise when I first stepped into it alone, my grandmother's locket tucked safely against my chest. I rented a tiny studio apartment where the peeling paint and the hum of the radiator reminded me that beginnings were rarely glamorous. But I carried a determination that felt almost tangible, a spark that refused to be snuffed out by doubt or the shadows of my past. I found work where I could, anything that paid, anything that allowed me to learn. Coffee shops, freelance projects, odd jobs. It all added up, each small victory whispering that I was capable. One rainy afternoon, I met Lila, a seasoned entrepreneur who ran a boutique marketing firm downtown. She had a keen eye for talent and a warmth that made people trust her instantly. She noticed the way I approached problems, the quiet persistence behind my nervous smile, and offered me an internship. It was grueling at first. Endless nights at my laptop, emails that went unanswered, clients who doubted me because I was young, a woman alone. My hands grew calloused, my eyes red from staring at screens, but every small triumph, landing a minor campaign, hearing a client say, "You did this yourself?" was a shot of adrenaline to my spirit. I began to understand that independence wasn't just about money. It was about claiming my voice, proving to myself that I could shape my life. The money started trickling in, slowly but surely. I rented a better apartment, bought a secondhand laptop that didn't crash every 5 minutes, and enrolled in evening classes to sharpen my business skills. I learned negotiation, marketing strategies, and finance management, skills my parents never valued because they assumed I'd always rely on them. I was learning to rely only on myself. I kept most of my success hidden from my family. Social media posts were modest. A coffee cup with a caption about small wins, a vague note about a busy week. They assumed I was struggling, maybe living paycheck to paycheck, and it gave me a quiet satisfaction. Every day I sent invoices, every signed contract, every tiny deposit into my bank account was a silent reclaiming of my power. Then came my first breakthrough, a major client, a company that trusted me with a campaign budget that exceeded my previous year's earnings. I poured myself into the project, staying up all night, rewriting proposals, tweaking designs, and presenting with a confidence that had been absent in the kitchen fights years ago. When it succeeded, I felt the thrill of victory, the kind that doesn't need validation from anyone else. By the end of that year, I had not only financial independence but a small but growing reputation in my field. I had built a life that my younger self could only dream of. And though the pain from my family's betrayal lingered like a shadow, it no longer defined me. I had learned to rise above, to keep my success close and my pride closer. In the quiet moments, I would touch the locket around my neck and smile, knowing my grandmother had been right. Strength doesn't come from what others give you, but from the courage to claim what is already within you. And I had claimed it. It was a crisp Saturday morning when they showed up, my parents and sister, faces polished with expectation, eyes brimming with the smug certainty that I would still be the same struggling girl they'd dismissed. They stepped into my office, a space I had meticulously curated over years, the walls adorned with bold, abstract art I had collected from small but brilliant local artists, a desk that gleamed with purpose, and shelves lined with books and awards, each one a testament to countless late nights and relentless determination. The air was quiet except for the soft hum of the city below, and I let them take it all in. They lingered by the window, eyes scanning the skyline, the minimalist yet elegant decor, the faint scent of vanilla and leather that always filled the room. My sister fidgeted, tugging at the hem of her blouse, the only indication that she sensed something was off. My mother's smile was tight, the kind that strains muscles you didn't know existed, while my father's jaw clenched ever so slightly, a silent admission that maybe, just maybe, the assumptions they had held about me were wrong. I walked around the desk slowly, letting my heels click against the polished floor. Every step was deliberate, a rhythm that matched the heartbeat I felt in my chest. "Good morning," I said softly, almost conversational, but the calm in my voice carried a weight they hadn't anticipated. They turned toward me, eyes wide, searching for the familiar tremor, the insecurity they expected. "There's something I need to clarify," I began, letting a measured pause stretch long enough for suspense to settle over the room. "That $10,000 venue my sister booked, charged to my credit? It never left my bank account. Not a cent, because it was never mine to pay for." I refused, and I did not back down. Shock rippled across their faces. My sister's hand flew to her mouth, a gesture I had seen 100 times in photos, but never anticipated seeing directed at me. My mother's lips parted, the tight mask of control cracking ever so slightly, and my father's eyes widened with disbelief. I let them absorb the silence, the truth sinking in like ice water. Then I walked them to the other side of the office, showing them the contracts, the client portfolios, the growth charts I had built from scratch. This, I said, gesturing around, is the life I built without relying on anyone who doubted me. These numbers, these clients, this business, it's mine. All of it. And I've done it while keeping my dignity intact. They shuffled from one display to another, their expressions a mixture of awe and guilt. I could see it. The realization that the girl they once underestimated had become a woman whose reach, skill, and determination far exceeded what they had ever imagined. I returned to my desk, my posture relaxed but commanding. I didn't tell you about any of this because I didn't owe you proof. I owed myself a life free of your assumptions. And now that you're here, you'll see exactly who I am and what I am capable of before you make another claim about what I should or shouldn't do. My sister swallowed hard, the arrogance she had carried for years faltering under the weight of my quiet power. My parents, unable to speak, merely nodded, the guilt slowly washing over them. For the first time, the balance had shifted. They no longer controlled the narrative, I did. And in that moment, watching their stunned faces, I felt the satisfaction of years of struggle crystallize into undeniable truth. I had not just survived their expectations, I had surpassed them, silently, gracefully, and without apology. The room was thick with tension, but this time it wasn't mine to bear. I finally had the upper hand, the quiet authority that comes from knowing you fought for everything on your own. I let them linger in that wait for a moment longer, watching their expressions soften and strain at the same time. They had expected compliance, weakness, maybe even tears, but I offered none of that. I've decided, I began, letting my voice be calm but unwavering, that I will help, but not without conditions. Things will change, or there will be no support from me. My parents exchanged glances, a flicker of doubt crossing their faces. My sister's lips tightened, and I could see her expecting an argument, a breakdown, but I continued. First, I said, looking directly at my sister, you must take responsibility for your choices. Stop relying on others to pay your debts or solve your problems. You have the talent and the means to create your own life, and it's time you start doing it. Her eyes widened, and I let her sit with the weight of that truth. I turned to my mother, softer now but firm. You need to stop undermining those around you with guilt and expectation. Support without manipulation. Recognize the strength in people instead of questioning it. I won't allow old patterns to dictate my boundaries anymore. My father's shoulders stiffened, and I met his gaze. And you, I said gently but firmly, must learn to respect the autonomy of your children. Your judgment doesn't define their worth, and it never did. You've carried pride as a shield for too long. Now it's time to see the impact of your words and choices. Each statement landed like a carefully placed stone, and I could feel the shift in energy. It was no longer about blame or shame. It was about growth, about confronting old habits that had caused pain and stifled independence. I wasn't punishing them. I was creating the space for accountability, for change. I care about all of you, I said, letting a softer note enter my voice, but I will not compromise my life for old patterns. If you want my support, it will be on the terms of respect, responsibility, and genuine effort. Anything less is not acceptable. The room fell silent, but it wasn't uncomfortable silence. It was reflective, a pause where they could weigh their own choices and their impact. I could see it slowly dawning on them that the dynamic had changed irrevocably. The woman they had underestimated had not only survived, but she had the clarity, power, and vision to demand boundaries, and they had no choice but to respect them. I took a step back, allowing the moment to breathe, and felt a quiet pride surge within me. This wasn't just about money or a venue. It was about self-respect, about showing them the power of integrity and resilience. In that space, I realized I had turned every injustice into a lesson, every slight into fuel, and every doubt into a reason to rise. And in that stillness, I knew I was no longer the girl who trembled at their accusations. I was a woman who had rewritten the rules, defined the terms, and claimed her life unapologetically. Months passed after that confrontation, and slowly, I watched the changes take root. My sister started managing her finances, making her own reservations, even coming to me for advice rather than assuming I would pay her way. She still stumbled at times, but I saw growth where there had once been entitlement. My parents, too, began to soften, their pride reshaping into respect. Conversations no longer carried the undercurrent of blame. Instead, there was acknowledgement, tentative but genuine, of the woman I had become. I spent evenings reflecting on my journey, the years of struggle, the nights spent questioning whether I would ever rise above the weight of expectation. I traced the outline of the locket around my neck, the gold cool under my fingers, and remembered my grandmother's words, "Never let anyone decide your worth. You are stronger than you think." That small token had guided me through despair, doubt, and fear, and now it felt like a symbol of triumph rather than a comfort against loneliness. In my office, I looked out over the skyline I had fought to claim. Every skyscraper, every light flickering in the distance, was a reminder of what perseverance could accomplish. I allowed myself a quiet smile, not of victory over others, but of pride in myself. I had not just survived their expectations. I had created a life that reflected my values, my hard work, and my integrity. Even as they began to rebuild their relationships with me, I remained vigilant about my boundaries. I helped where I chose, guided when asked, but never allowed old patterns to creep back in. Respect, responsibility, and growth were the terms now, and I no longer feared enforcing them. And in the stillness of that realization, I felt a deep, unshakable peace. I had transformed pain into power, rejection into determination, and doubt into clarity. The woman who had once trembled at accusations and blame had become a woman who could stand tall, guide others, and still honor her own strength. Finally, I whispered to myself, a private affirmation echoing across the quiet room. I am enough, I am capable, and I am free. It was not just a statement. It was a declaration, a closing chapter of the past, and an opening to the life I had earned, unapologetically, gracefully, and entirely my own.